In the last section, we learned about emotional regulation and using the zones of regulation. In this section, we will focus on understanding more about prevention versus de-escalation techniques to help regulate emotions. The purpose of this video will be to understand the differences between preventative and de-escalating techniques and when to use them in the classroom. Preventive versus de-escalation interventions. Preventive interventions can be helpful in order to prevent triggering an emotional response or outburst from a student. We will discuss specific techniques for this later in this video. De-escalation techniques or interventions are used to de-escalate and regulate an already emotionally triggered student. These can help calm the student and prevent the learning environment from being overly disrupted. We will discuss specific techniques for de-escalation also later in this video. There are several preventive interventions that can be used with students to help prevent an emotional outburst. These include teacher empathy or proximity. It's important to ask students how they are feeling and be a listening ear as they come into your class each day. Using the zones of regulation can also be useful for this. Having students identify what zone they are in can help them start off the class in a preventive way. Using relaxation techniques can also be a good prevention intervention. So things like using mindful breathing, having students close their eyes, and stretch. And lastly, you want to avoid escalation responses. So these would include things like getting closer into a student's face when giving them directives, discrediting the student, engaging in a power struggle, and even raising your voice. So again, using these strategies can be very helpful in preventing triggering an emotional response or an outburst from a student. If students do become emotionally triggered during class and it cannot be prevented, then using a de-escalation intervention will be necessary. These include talking to the student in a calm but firm tone. This will help calm the student down. It's also important to give the student a break or some space. This can be done with a reflection room and having the student fill out the reflection zone form. That way they can practice mindful breathing and reflect on what is causing the behavior. Use I statements when discussing with the student their behavior and their feelings. And finally, give students time to reflect on their behavior and to come back into the classroom emotionally regulated and ready to learn. So let's look at an example. Ryan is an 8th grade boy, and this morning when he arrived at school, his teacher asked him for his homework, and Ryan did not have it. She expressed frustration and took away his recess as a consequence. A short time later, his desk mate accidentally bumped him. Ryan punched him in the stomach. His teacher, upset by this outburst, began to yell at Ryan to stop. Ryan began to scream, kick chairs, and hide under his desk. After 10 minutes of trying to get Ryan out from under the desk, he was brought to the principal's office and given a 5-day suspension for fighting and disruptive behavior. What do you think could have been done differently? Could the teacher have prevented this using any of the prevention techniques? If it wasn't prevented, what could the teacher have used to de-escalate the situation? In your workbook, reflect on this example and answer what you would have done differently in this situation. In the next couple sections of this training, you will learn more specific steps on how to use these techniques that we went through today.